Okay, we're going to change the fuel pump on a 1989 15 horsepower outboard boat engine. I've listed the model number of the engine, the replacement part number for the Sierra fuel pump, and it takes about 10 minutes to do this entire job. Okay, so obviously the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the cover off the engine. The fuel pump is located on the side, and you'll recognize it by it's got 4 screws on it. Now you want to be careful. There are 4 screws, but 2 of them are going to hold the fuel pump onto the engine, and 2 of them are going to hold the fuel pump together. You want to basically take a look at what I'm doing and make sure you remove the correct 2 screws, because if you remove the other 2 screws, what happens is the entire fuel pump comes apart, and that's a whole other story. You know, some people like to rebuild these fuel pumps. I can tell you that I tried doing it prior to actually changing it here, and I can tell you there's 2 springs in there. There's one bigger spring and one tiny little spring, and once these parts come apart, the springs unload on you and they fly everywhere. So some people could put it back together and make the pump work again. Personally, as far as I'm concerned, you're better off just replacing the pump, because you're going to spend about $10 to $12 on a fuel pump kit, and the entire brand new fuel pump is only about $30 to $35. Okay, so carefully remove the fuel lines. There's a clamp, should be a clamp on both the pieces of fuel line. And here I'm going to just flash the box for the Sierra part. It's 18-7350. That's the fuel pump. And now we're going to get started putting it on. There are 2 lines on this thing. One, the fuel comes in, it pumps, and the fuel comes out. It's pretty obvious. Make sure you put the thicker line on the thicker piece coming off the fuel pump, and the thinner line will come off the thinner piece coming off the fuel pump on the other side. Okay. They always recommend you change these clamps. I didn't have any replacement clamps. I'm going to use the same clamp. The fuel line goes on very, very tight, so the chance that it's going to leak there are pretty slim. Now, as you notice, there's a zip tie holding on the other side, and that's not the right way to do it. You're supposed to have another clamp on the other side, and again, like I said, I didn't have the right clamp. But as I was saying, these fuel lines go on these little spouts very, very tight. So I'm not too worried about it leaking, and actually the only thing I had was another zip tie, and I ended up doing the same thing that the last mechanic did, and I zip tied it on. I put the hose on, went on very, very tight, and I put a zip tie on and pulled it really, really tight, so it was tight either way, and it seemed to be fine. You're going to clip off the little extra piece there, and now there's a gasket, as you could see. It's a pretty thick, heavy-duty gasket that goes behind the fuel pump. Now, when you buy these new fuel pumps, they come with new gaskets anyway, so don't use the old one. And line it up, put your screws back in, make sure you catch the threads first with your fingertips, and carefully screw the screws back in, not tightening them completely, but you're going to snug them one at a time, and then you're going to do your final tightens once the fuel pump is flush up against your engine. Now, I don't know if anybody has noticed, but yes, there are 2 sets of hands on this, because I actually took my son out here and I was having him just hand me some tools, but he insisted on actually getting his hands dirty and doing some of the work. So yes, there are 2 sets of hands. There are 4 hands on this project, but you really only need one person to do it. It's a very, very simple job, and once those screws are tight, you're ready to go. You're going to prime your fuel bulb and force some gas up through there, and this thing should work great. All right, I hope everybody enjoyed the video, and please subscribe, share some comments, and good luck and happy boating.